everybody. This is Rachel Gardner, and you are listening to Spiritual Musings of a Popcorn Brain. Welcome to Season 5, where we will be sharing God stories. I'm hoping each week to bring you a new or longtime friend who has a story to share with you, something encouraging for you that will show you how God has worked directly in their life. I hope you're encouraged. So today I have Jason Duke. He is the campus pastor at the church where I attend, and I had sent out an email to several of the staff and elders asking if they would be willing to share their God story on my podcast, and he was the first one who answered and said that he would be willing to share. And he had a few that came to mind, but I think he's been praying about it, and I've been praying about it, and I think he's got one specifically that he's going to share today.
Well, Rachel, first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of your podcast and getting the opportunity to share part of the story. And as I got that email and started thinking through it, the one that came to mind was our daughter Blessing, and she was 3 weeks old whenever we met her, and she was born to a drug addict and prostitute down in Dallas, and her mother was working and not taking care of herself and wasn't doing prenatal care, and so Blessing was born 2 months premature. Her mom didn't even know she was pregnant for the first 5 months, and so there was only 2 months of awareness that she was even pregnant before having Blessing. And so we met Blessing when she was 3 weeks old. We spent the next week with her in the hospital, and in those first 3 weeks of her life, because she at the time was baby number 6 of this mother, the nurses and doctors were very familiar with this mother, and so they were very aware of previous health things with the other kids, and so they were working with Blessing, working through things. Blessing had some obstacles to overcome, but yet being 2 months premature and as small as she was, she still did really, really well in spite of some of those early setbacks. But as time went on, we brought her home. And over the next month and a half or so of having her at home, things began to change very quickly. And what sounded like cute little snoring, all of a sudden became, not breathing in the middle of the night. And me waking up, or my wife waking up to check on her to make sure she was still alive. And there was just a lot going on there. And we eventually, got to the place where she went from a G-tube going through her nose all the way to having a surgically inserted tube into her stomach. Mickey button and everything. And then in addition to that, she had to have surgery to have a tracheotomy put in. But I'll never forget what happened that night whenever we learned of her situation. And basically we met with the doctors, and they told us that, she may not make it through the surgery. It was a lot more severe than what we had understood or even just acknowledged at the time. And over the next few months, as things were progressing, there was one point in time where a doctor came to us and basically just said, here's what I need you to understand. And this is while our daughter is laying in a hospital bed, all strapped up with all these wires and all these tubes and everything going into her and monitoring her breathing and everything. And this doctor looked at us and said, this is probably the best it's ever going to get. Having 3 boys already at the time biologically, this was a new thing for us to be told something like that. And, we were only a few months in with her, and yet we loved her deeply. And besides the color of her skin, you couldn't tell she wasn't ours. She wasn't ours by birth, but she was ours by God. And so immediately we had continued praying for her health and for her healing. But that was the first time someone had said that this is probably the best it's going to be. And that hurt, and that was hard. But what it led to was a place of just deep conviction on the power of prayer and that this was our only answer. But then also just this deep, deep belief that God was going to do something different. And I would love to say that, immediately she was healed and all those things, but it wasn't that way. It took months and years. We had many other health struggles even after that time, but now she's 10 years old, or about to be 10 in just a few days. And the little girl that we now have is a drastically different little girl than what the doctors prepared us for or told us. God spoke. God did something very, very different. And so what we now see in her is a young girl who's vibrant, who is athletic, who runs, who plays, who yells and screams and laughs and is so full of joy. Her middle name is Joy. And so blessing Joy. But in the midst of all that, what we've seen God do is answer that prayer of healing. But it was very, very different than what we prayed for. He did it in a way that was greater than what we ever thought possible, but he did it on his time. And what we've learned in the process has been absolutely amazing in the way he has drawn us closer to him. But it was one of those things in that moment, in those next few months, that we did a lot of questioning, did a lot of asking and searching, and just, God, what are you doing? Why? It was hard, but yet I think about that passage where he says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And even in the hardness of life and her situation and all the other things that it created within our family, he never left us nor forsaken us or forsook us. And he was there. And so that's my God story of my daughter Blessing and the joy that she is and the blessing that she truly is in our life. So thank you again.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Jason. If you have any questions for Jason, he has agreed that I can leave his email link in the description for this podcast. If you have a God story that you would like to share with me, please look on the link that's at the bottom of the description for this episode, and you can send me a voice message. And I will listen to it, and we will see if we can share it. And also, if you found this episode encouraging, please share it with someone. And subscribe so that you don't miss any more of these God stories that we're going to be sharing.